We live in interesting times. Today's stories. France-Algerian community takes a stand against Bouteflika. A cave of relics has been found beneath the Mayan ruins of Chichen Itza. London patient, second case ever of HIV remission. A measles outbreak in Madagascar sparks concern. Air pollution in Seoul worsens. Tornadoes leave a swath of destruction in Alabama. A judge denies the ISIS bride case expedition, but her defense lawyer is encouraged. War horses, Syria's Arabian beauties, plod their way to recovery. Plus, a participant in the 35th annual Great Aloha Run says run at your own pace and you will finish the race. Hello everyone, I am Sarah Nackman bringing you stories from around the globe. And this is Eagle News, Washington, D.C. France-Algerian community in Paris rallied against President Bouteflika's bid for a fifth term and plan a gathering on March 8 in support of their countrymen.
On a un rôle à faire aussi pour faire, j'ai envie de dire, pression sur les différents gouvernements de tout le monde, de partout, pour dire qu'on est aussi important et qu'il ne faut pas soutenir ce régime en place et que cette transition, elle doit être faite de façon collective.
Algerians on Monday dismissed President Abdelaziz Bouteflika's promise to quit early if re-elected for a fifth time in April and eyed fresh protests to push him from office. The ailing leader, who suffered a stroke in 2013, vowed in a letter read out on state television late Sunday to organize a national conference that would set a date to further polls which he would not contest. The letter read, quote, "I pledge not to be a candidate in that election, which will ensure I am succeeded in an undeniable conditions of serenity, freedom, and transparency." It said, "I listened and heard the cry from the hearts of protesters, and in particular the thousands of young people who questioned me about the future of our homeland." His message, followed by the formal submission of his candidacy for the April 18 poll by his campaign manager, Abdelghani Zelaine, failed to win hearts as new protests hit the capital and other cities. In central Algiers, hundreds of mostly young demonstrators rallied peacefully overnight and into the early hours of Monday as a helicopter buzzed overhead and police deployed gradually across the city. Protests were reported in several cities around the country Monday. In Third City, Constantine, lawyers announced an indefinite strike and a local journalist said 1,000 people took to the streets. In downtown Algiers, dozens of high school students were quickly surrounded by police when they tried to protest, and undergraduates at a university in the city boycotted campus. Students at several universities said they were weighing up staging a walkout and protest on Tuesday. Residents of the capital said they were gearing up for demonstrations Friday, the main day for protests so far, as they dismissed Bouteflika's promises as, quote, an insult. Archaeologists have discovered a cave filled with hundreds of artifacts beneath the ruins of the Mayan city of Chichen Itza in Mexico. Mexican archaeologist Guillermo de Anda told a news conference the massive cave is a scientific treasure. He said it could help scientists better understand the origins, lives, and beliefs of the residents of the Chichen Itza, a stunning city of stone in the Yucatan Peninsula that was founded sometime around 750 AD.
La entrada, les decía, es muy difícil. Hay que hacerla a rastras, pecho tierra o a gatas en el mejor de los casos.
The cave was found about 1.2 miles from the temple of Kukulkan, the giant step pyramid that dominates the center of Chichen Itza. De Anda said it sits about 80 feet underground and contains multiple chambers connected by narrow passages, often so narrow that researchers had to crawl or drag themselves through them. He said his team has explored about 460 meters of the cave so far and does not know how far it stretches. Deonda said locals had actually discovered the cave more than 50 years ago. But the archaeologists sent to explore the site at the time by the National Institute of Anthropology and History decided for unknown reasons to seal the entrance with stones and filed only a brief report. Deonda had seen the report but did not give it much thought until he happened upon the entrance to the cave last year while exploring another site nearby. His team believes the largest incense burners found in the cave date from around 700 to 1000 AD. The indigenous Mayas who inhabit the area today warned his team that a venomous coral snake guarded the site. Deonda said researchers did in fact find just such a specimen, which blocked their access to the cave for 4 days. Deonda's team plans to continue exploring the cave. He said rather than remove the artifacts they find, they will study them on site. Researchers said Tuesday a second person is in sustained remission from HIV-1, the virus that causes AIDS, after ceasing treatment and is likely cured in what was hailed as proof that the condition could one day be cured. Doctors reported in the journal Nature 10 years after the first confirmed case of an HIV-infected person being rid of the deadly disease. A man known only as the London patient has shown no sign of the virus for nearly 19 months. Both have received bone marrow transplants to treat blood cancers, receiving stem cells from donors with genetic mutation present in less than 1% of Europeans that prevents HIV from taking hold. Lead author Ravindra Gupta, a professor at the University of Cambridge, said it is a landmark. After 10 years of not being able to replicate the first case, people were wondering if this was a fluke. Gupta said he thinks it is important to reaffirm that this is real and it can be done. Millions of people infected with HIV around the globe keep the disease in check with so-called antiretroviral therapy, or ARV. But the treatment does not rid patients of the virus. Close to 37 million people are living with HIV worldwide, but only 59% are receiving ARV. Nearly 1 million people die every year from HIV-related causes. A new drug-resistant form of HIV is also a growing concern. Gupta and his team emphasize that bone marrow transplant, a dangerous and painful procedure, is not a viable option for HIV treatment. But a second instance of remission and likely cure following such a transplant will help scientists narrow the range of treatment strategies. Madagascar is experiencing a surge in measles cases. According to the World Health Organization, from October 2018 through February 12, 2019, and a total of 66,278 cases and 922 deaths have been reported. Doctors warn against complacency, saying often people do not come to the hospital until the problem has reached a really complicated stage.
Comme j'avais expliqué auparavant, la rougeole était considérée toujours comme une maladie banale. Et les gens utilisent des décoctions. La population a un peu négligé la virulence de la rougeole. Et c'est vraiment un stade compliqué qu'il vient à l'hôpital.
Il est souvent dit que la malnutrition fait le lit de la rougeole. Et les cas les plus graves de rougeole sont souvent rapportés chez des enfants qui sont malnutris. Et la rougeole aussi, de par son évolution, peut...
The UN Children's Agency said Friday just 10 countries were responsible for 3/4 of a global surge in measles cases last year, including one of the world's richest nations, France. 98 countries reported more cases of measles in 2018 compared with 2017, and the world body warned that conflict, complacency, and growing anti-vaccine movement threatened to undo decades of work to tame the disease. Henrietta Fore, executive director of UNICEF, said, "This is a wake-up call. We have a safe, effective, and inexpensive vaccine against a highly contagious disease, a vaccine that saved almost 1 million lives every year over the last 2 decades." These cases haven't happened overnight. Just as the serious outbreak we are seeing today took hold in 2018, lack of action today will have disastrous consequences for children tomorrow. Measles is more contagious than tuberculosis or Ebola, yet it is eminently preventable with a vaccine that costs pennies. But the World Health Organization last year said cases worldwide had soared nearly 50% in 2018, killing around 136,000 people. Ukraine, the Philippines, and Brazil saw the largest year-on-year increases. In Ukraine alone, there were 35,120 cases, nearly 30,000 more than in 2017. Brazil saw 10,262 cases in 2018 after having none at all the year before, while the Philippines reported 15,599 cases last year compared to 2,407 in 2017. Taken together, the 10 nations accounting for 75% of the increase from 2017 to 2018 account for only a tenth of the global population. The countries with the highest rate of measles last year were Ukraine, 822 cases per million people, Serbia, 618, Albania, 481, Liberia, 412, Georgia, 398, Yemen, 328, Montenegro, 323, and Greece, 227. While most of the countries that experience large spikes in cases are beset by unrest or conflict, France saw its caseload jump by 2,269. Here in the United States, there was a 559% year-on-year increase in cases from 120 to 791. The resurgence of the disease in some countries has been linked to medically baseless claims linking the measles vaccine to autism, which has been spread in part on social media by members of the so-called anti-vax movement. The WHO last month listed vaccine hesitancy among the top 10 most pressing global health threats for 2019. Fore said, "Almost all of these cases are preventable, and yet children are getting infected even in places where there is simply no excuse." Measles may be the disease, but all too often the real infection is misinformation, mistrust, and complacency. In war-torn Yemen, where health services in many regions have collapsed, UNICEF and the World Health Organization joined with local authorities last month in a campaign to vaccinate some 13 children aged 6 months to 15 for measles and rubella. UN officials estimated that 92% of the targeted children were jabbed during the one-week push, which ended on February 14. Up next, air pollution in Seoul worsens. Tornadoes leave a swath of destruction in Alabama. A judge denies the ISIS bride case expedition, but her defense lawyer is encouraged. War horses, serious Arabian beauties plot their way to recovery. Eagle News, Washington, D.C. will return shortly. Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News, Washington, D.C. South Korea is facing a worsening air pollution problem. The government has taken measures to regulate the number of vehicles on the roads and particles originating from construction sites, and warning signals are being sent out alerting citizens to wear masks. As it struggles to address what has become an urgent public concern, the government said Monday an attempt by South Korea to create artificial rain to tackle air pollution many blame on neighboring China has failed. Many South Koreans blamed China when pollution surged for 3 days earlier this month. And on Friday, the Korea Meteorological Administration, or KMA, sent an aircraft to seed clouds with silver iodide in the hope of promoting rain. The intention was for the rain to douse airborne particles and pollutants known as fine dust in South Korea. However, KMA said in a preliminary report issued Monday, an initial analysis of the experiment has been disappointing. The agency said while a weak, misty rain was detected for several minutes, there was no observation of significant precipitation. It said aside from its success or failure, the test was an opportunity to accumulate the necessary technology for a faster commercialization of cloud seeding. A full report is expected to be released later next month. Air quality in South Korea is generally better than in China, which is more frequently affected by choking bouts of filthy air. South Korean President Moon Jae-in last week advised his officials to handle the issue as a natural disaster, as he urged cooperation with Beijing, addressing great public concerns about the fine dust coming from China. Beijing is also trying to tackle the scourge, which causes widespread public anger, and a recent study found urban levels of PM 2.5, the tiny airborne particles considered most harmful to health, had been cut by almost a third on average over 4 years. But they remain far above World Health Organization norms. The pollution levels in Korea sometimes spike as the prevailing winds blow PM 2.5 particles across the sea between the two countries. China, which according to the International Energy Agency uses coal to generate around 3/4 of its energy, is regarded as the world's biggest polluter. Last year, South Korea shut down 5 aging coal-fired power plants in a bid to improve its air quality. In other news, rescuers uncovered widespread damage in Alabama caused by 2 back-to-back tornadoes that ripped across the southern state. Sheriff Jay Jones of Lee County, which borders Georgia, said it looks almost as if someone took a giant knife and scraped the ground. There are slabs where homes formerly stood. There is debris everywhere. Trees are snapped. He said some of the dead were children, including one just 6 years old. According to the sheriff, such destructive devastation has not been seen for half a century in the state. Another young victim, Taylor Thornton, died while visiting a friend in Lee County. Jones said there are several people who were still unaccounted for. Others were hospitalized, some with very serious injuries.
We ran around in these woods, ran around everywhere, friends, family, and now it's all gone. So it's heartbreaking.
It looks like a bomb went off. I mean, this is just a big crater right there. Like, it used to be nothing but trees and houses. You could see the neighbor's house, obviously, but this is completely landscape change.
Search operations for those still missing had to be halted late Sunday due to hazardous conditions, but were renewed early Monday with agencies from across the state and from neighboring Georgia joining the hunt. According to Jones, the swath of destruction left was a 1/4 mile wide and stretched for the several miles that it traveled on the ground. Local media reported the powerful winds picked up a billboard from the Lee County Flea Market in Alabama and dumped it some 20 miles away across the state line in Georgia. According to PowerOutage.us, more than 6,000 homes were left without power in Alabama, while 16,000 suffered outages in neighboring Georgia. The search for missing people has focused in the area around Beauregard, about 60 miles east of the state capital, Montgomery. While the heavy rains that accompanied the high winds had relented overnight, many roads in the worst-hit areas were blocked by debris, hindering search efforts. Governor Kay Ivey asked for expedited federal aid. She said President Donald Trump called her, vowing support and expressed his condolences to those affected. He later tweeted that he has directly offered the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, to give Alabama an A+ treatment.
It's going to take a long time to build it back up. But I think with everybody still sticking together, we'll get it done.
They say everything happens for a reason. I'm a firm believer in that. We just got to pray for the people that lost loved ones, pray for the community. We're all going to come together. We're going to make this better. It's going to take a while.
A federal judge has denied Huda Muthana's request for an expedited case as she seeks to return to the United States after leaving to join ISIS in Syria 5 years ago. The case hinges on whether or not Muthana, born in the U.S. to Yemeni parents and whose father worked in the U.S. as a diplomat, was a U.S. citizen at the time she left and surrendered her passport. A lawyer for Muthana's father says he was encouraged by the judge's comments, despite his denial to expedite the case.
Today, we're disappointed but understand the judge's initial ruling on the part, focusing on whether there's immediate harm. We recognize the equities in it. We're certainly concerned about her continued position in the camp, and if something changes that would overcome that, we'll file another request with the court as circumstances warrant. We're also very encouraged. The judge's comments certainly foreshadow the ultimate outcome of this case, in our viewpoint. The weaknesses of the government's arguments and the fact that Huda Muthana is entitled and is in fact a U.S. citizen. The question on this is a constitutional question, the rights of any U.S. citizen. And a U.S. citizen doesn't forfeit that by committing a criminal act.
A shadow of her former self after years of war, 11-year-old Arabian mare Karen stands quietly as a Syrian vet gently pushes a syringe into her pale gray neck. But inside her stable near Damascus today, her hips jut out viciously from her overgrown speckled coat. Weak and withdrawn, Karen is unable to even whinny. After almost 8 years of war, she is one of dozens of Arabian horses from all over Syria recovering from the physical and psychological trauma of the fighting. Prized for their beauty, endurance, and speed, Arabian purebreds are one of the oldest horse breeds in the world. In Syria, Bedouins have bred them in the north of the country for centuries, seeking to maintain the purity of the local bloodlines. Before the conflict, Ahmad Sharida had proudly watched Karen grow from a long-legged foal into a graceful equine beauty.
2013 وقت العدوان الإسرائيلي ضرب هاي المنطقة داير مدورنا نحن بحيط المناطق عسكرية، نحن بمضمار سباق الشام بالديماس. الضرب اللي صار ضلت الخيل لمدة سنة كاملة تلد يا حالات مشوهة يا اما تلد حالات كلها ميتة، يعني ما في سنة كاملة موسم كامل راح جيل بحاله من وراء الضربة من وراء الأصوات.
But Sharida lost sight of Karen after she was stolen from her stable in eastern Ghouta in 2012, the same year rebels overran the region northeast of Damascus. The area suffered 5 years of regime bombardment, as well as food and medicine shortages under a crippling siege before Russia-backed government forces took it back last year. Sharida had long fled his home region but returned to search for missing Arabian horses and immediately recognized Karen when he found her in October. Like all other horses he found, she was frail and sick after years of being surrounded by fighting, not enough food, and no medical attention. Syria's war has killed more than 360,000 people and displaced millions since it started in 2011 with the brutal repression of anti-government protests. And it has taken a toll on the country's equine population too.
من سلالة هدبنزحي هذه الفرس كانت ملغوطة بمنطقة دوما حيث منطقة سيطرة الإرهابيين سابقا، فكانت هاي خاضعينها برامج تغذية سيئة جدا، ربما انها ما بتاكلش. المنظر اللي اتت فيه الى هذه المنطقة انها ما بتاكل هاي الفرس. اضف الى انها نفسيا صفر.
2014 اول ما بدينا اعادة السيطرة على الخيول كان عندنا اعداد بحدود 6000 جواد، كنا فاقدين بحدود ضمن الاحصائيات اللي عندنا والارقام تسجل بحدود 3000 جواد. طبعا لحد الان ثبت هذا العدد 3000 استعدنا منه 72، بقي العدد الباقي اللي هو مفقود بحدود ال 2900 وشي 30، هدول مفقودين لحد الان، بين نفوق، بين ضياع، بين سرقه، بين خارج الحدود السوريه ممكن يكونوا.
But the conflict in Syria has turned around in recent years, and after a series of victories against rebels and jihadists, President Bashar al-Assad's regime is now in control of almost two-thirds of the country. Having returned to one region after another, the Damascus authorities are now trying to protect the country's Arabian purebreds. Shaib says 2014 WHO has recognized 2,400 new Syrian foals as Arabian after samples from their manes were sent off for DNA testing in Germany. Horses rescued from retaken areas are being looked after at a state-run stables west of capital Damascus. A participant in the 35th annual Great Aloha Run says, "Run at your own pace and you will finish the race." That's next. Eagle News Washington, D.C. will return shortly. This is Eagle News, Washington, D.C. I am Sarah Nachman. For the last 35 years, Hawaii has been graciously hosting the Great Aloha Run, where tens of thousands of runners from around the world gather in Honolulu not only to compete, but also to run for a good cause. One runner from Hawaii shares his experience in this year's event with Eagle News correspondent Alfred Acenas. Take a look.
Despite heavy rains and flooding over the President's Day weekend, the 35th annual Great Aloha Run still kicked off on Monday morning with nearly perfect weather, marking a successful start in downtown Honolulu at 7 a.m. for upwards of 24,000 runners and walkers participating. The relatively flat running course stretches 8.15 miles or 13 plus kilometers, starting near Aloha Tower at Honolulu Harbor, then right along Nimitz and Kamehameha highways, and ending inside Aloha Stadium. Thus the name, the Great Aloha Run. Andy Wacker of Boulder, Colorado was the first to cross the finish line, coming in at 40 minutes, 34 seconds. The first person from Hawaii to finish was Pierce Murphy of Hanalei, Kauai Island, who came in a mere 10 seconds after Wacker. The first female to finish happens to be Wacker's wife, Carly Rempel, at 47 minutes 30 seconds, the first time ever for a husband and wife couple to be the top finishers in the same. One unique feature about this yearly event is the large presence of military personnel running orderly in formations and carrying their unit colors, all participating under the Sounds of Freedom program. Local resident and two-time participant TJ shares with us how he prepared for this race and how he encourages others to join next year's event.
I prepared by running 20 to 25 miles a week for the past 2 months. I would tell them that it's a lot easier than you think. It's a very straight run, so you don't have to worry about any hills. And just run your own pace and you'll finish it in no time.
For those who may have missed this year's event, no worries. Information on the 2020 Great Aloha Run will become available soon via their website, greataloharun.com. Reporting from Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm Alfred Acenas, 1 with 25.
Thanks, Alfred. That is today's Eagle News Washington, D.C. Join us tomorrow as we bring stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at Eaglenews.PH and EagleNewsAlive.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/EagleNewsPH. On behalf of Eagle News Washington, D.C., thank you for watching. I am Sarah Nachman, and I am 1 with 25.